Ram 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Ram Hare Krishna Hare 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 Krishna Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Venumadhuri Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Sorry, Prabhu. I had a small glitch with my computer. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining this morning Bhagavatam class. Start with the Jai Radha Madhava. You're able to hear me, right, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu.
Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodhanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yashodhanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jaya Krishna Balaram, Krishna Balaram, Krishna Balaram, Jaya Krishna Balaram, Nitai Gaura Nataraj, Gaura Nataraj, Gaura Nataraj, Nitai Gaura Nataraj, Jaya Radha Shyama Sundar, Radha Shyama Sundar, Radha Shyama Sundar, Shri Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Shri Radhe, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Guru Deva, Guru Deva, Guru Deva, Srila Guru Deva, Nitai Gora Haribol, 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 Nitai Gora Haribol, Nitai Gora Haribol, 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 Nitai Gora Haribol. Yom Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Stotra Sata Shri Srimad, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrind ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Thank you all once again for joining this morning for the Bhagavatam class. We will be speaking on, let me do the screen sharing here. Prabhu, can you confirm that you're able to see my screen too?
Not yet, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhuji, we can see your screen.
Okay.
Oh, I can see.
Now you're able to see, Prabhu?
Still see spinning, Prabhu.
Hmm.
Yeah, now I can see, Prabhu. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So we will be speaking on verse 13 from chapter 4, canto 1 of Srimad Bhagavatam. Continuation of our morning Srimad Bhagavatam every Saturday morning. Before I start, I want to seek all your blessings to be able to say something useful for all of us this morning. This precious hour in the morning, you're all joining. So I seek the blessings of all the Vaishnavas and Acharyas and all the devotees here to be able to speak something of use to all of us based on my understanding from my limited knowledge. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So once again we will be talking on the 13th verse of the 4th chapter. We'll chant the verse, translation and purport, and then proceed with the discussion. Tat sarvam na samachakshva prishto yad iha kinchana manye tvam vishaye vacham snatam anyatra chandasat. Tat sarvam na samachakshva prishto yad iha kinchana manye tvam vishaye vacham snatam anyatra chandasat. Tat sarvam na samachakshva prishto yad iha kinchana manye tvam vishaye vacham snatam anyatra chandasat. Any of the devotees would like to chant the verse?
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Tat sarvam na samachakshva prusto yad iha kinchana manye tvam vishaye vacham snatam anyatra chandasat.
Thank you, Mataji. Anybody else?
Tatsarvam na samachakshva prishto yad iha kinchana manye tvam vishaye vacham snatam anyatra chandasat.
Thank you, Mataji. Any of the Prabhus?
Tatsarvam nah samashakshva prishto yad iha kinchana manye tvam vishaye vacham snatam anyatra chandasat.
Thank you, Prabhu. Synonyms: tat, that, sarvam, all, naha, unto us, samachakshva, clearly explained, prishtaha, questioned, yat iha, herein, kinchana, all that, manye, we think, tvam, you, vishaye, in all subjects, vacham, meanings of words, snatam, fully acquainted, anyatra, except, chandasat, portion of the Vedas. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Translation: we know that you are expert in the meaning of all subjects except some portions of the Vedas, and thus you can clearly explain the answers to all the questions we have just put to you. We're going to read the translation one more time. We know that you are expert in the meaning of all subjects except some portions of the Vedas, and thus you can clearly explain the answers to all the questions we have just put to you. Purport. The difference between the Vedas and the Puranas is like that between the Brahmanas and the Parivrajakas. The Brahmanas are meant to administer some fruitive sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas, but the Parivrajakacharyaas or learned preachers are meant to disseminate transcendental knowledge to one and all. As such, the Parivrajakacharyaas are not always expert in pronouncing the Vedic mantras, which are practiced systematically by accent and meter by the Brahmanas, who are meant for administering Vedic rites. Yet, it should not be considered that the Brahmanas are more important than the itinerant preachers. They are one and different simultaneously because they are meant for the same end in different ways. There is no difference also between the Vedic mantras and what is explained in the Puranas and Itihasas. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, it is mentioned in the Madhyandina Shruti that all the Vedas, namely the Sama, Atharva, Rig, Yajur, Puranas, Itihasas, Upanishads, etc. are emanations from the breathing of the Supreme Being. The only difference is that the Vedic mantras are mostly begun with Pranava Omkara, and it requires some training to practice the metric pronunciation of the Vedic mantras. But that does not mean that Srimad Bhagavatam is of less importance than the Vedic mantras. On the contrary, it is the ripened fruit of all the Vedas, as stated before. Besides that, the most perfectly liberated soul, Srila Sukadeva Goswami, is absorbed in the studies of the Bhagavatam, although he is already self-realized. Srila Sutta Goswami is following his footsteps, and therefore his position is not the least less important, because he was not expert in chanting Vedic mantras with metric pronunciation, which depends more on practice than actual realization. Realization is more important than parrot-like chanting. Before we go into the details of the verse, the context of the current verse, even though we discuss this every week, it is always good to bring in picture where we are with this verse and understand the context before we dwell further on it. This particular chapter we are on is the appearance of Sri Narada, chapter 4. The prior 3 chapters, the sages of Naimisharanya are assembled in Naimisharanya for performing a yajna for the welfare of the human society. Knowing that Kali Yuga is going to be degraded, they want to do something for the welfare of the human society, and that's what they are assembled there. And they have been performing a lot of sacrifices. And Sutta Goswami enters the arena, and he is being respected, praised, and he is given a yasasan, and he is asked some questions, 6 questions, which is the first chapter, later part of the first chapter. They ask 6 questions. All the questions are suitable questions for the welfare of the humanity. They are not asking for themselves, they are asking for the welfare of the humanity. And Sutta Goswami, upon hearing those questions, is very happy, having received such wonderful questions from them. He praises their the quality of their questions, and then he starts answering those from beginning of chapter 2, and it goes all the way to end of chapter 3. The last question of the 6th question they ask is, where does the religious principles take shelter after the after Krishna leaves this pastime and and goes back to his abode? Until he was there, he was the shelter of religious principles, and so they wanted to know who or what is the shelter after the departure of Krishna. So the text 43 of the 3rd chapter says that the Srimad Bhagavatam is the shelter. Srimad Bhagavatam is the literary incarnation of the Lord, and it is like the sunlight or the torchlight for the people covered in ignorance in the age of Kali, and one should take shelter of Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's how the 3rd chapter concludes. And then the Shaunaka Rishi and the sages, they are interested more to know more about Srimad Bhagavatam. Their curiosity is even more aroused now to hear more from Sutta Goswami about this Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavata Purana. So they start asking questions about Bhagavatam. The first few questions in the up to the verse number 12 of last week, they were all questions by the sage Shaunaka Rishi on behalf of the sages. The question number 3 was a lot of details about when and what and how, where Srimad Bhagavatam was given. Questions 4 to 8 were about the speaker of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Sukadeva Goswami. And the questions 9 to 12 were about the listener of the Srimad Bhagavatam, or the person who was inquiring from Sukadeva Goswami, Maharaj Parikshit. So today's verse, they conclude all the questions, and this verse concludes their questions, and they say that you, Sutta Goswami, is the most qualified person to answer our questions in this assembly. So please, answer our questions. So that is today's verse, verse number 13. And then from verse 14 and after, Sutta Goswami starts speaking and answers these questions, and then it goes through and then they ask more questions, and the Srimad Bhagavatam, the 10 cantos come through. So if we go back to the verse again with this context, so they're saying in the translation, we know that you are expert in the meaning of all subjects except some portion of the Vedas, and thus you can clearly explain the answers to all the questions we have just put to you. So the 12 or however many questions, the 8 plus 9 questions they had asked from verse number 3 to verse number 12, or 10 questions. And those we want you to answer those questions is the request given by sages of Naimisharanya. So the key points to be taken from the translation and purport. So Shaunaka Rishi is praising Sutta Goswami to be an expert in this matter and requesting him to answer the questions asked so far about Srimad Bhagavatam, about the speaker of Srimad Bhagavatam, and the listener or the inquirer of Srimad Bhagavatam. The Srimad Bhagavatam was given by Vyasadeva to Sukadeva Goswami, but it officially became known to others only through that discussion between Parikshit Maharaj and Sukadeva Goswami, inquiry of Parikshit Maharaj to Sukadeva Goswami. And it says Sutta Goswami is expert in all subjects except some portion of the Vedas. That some portion of the Vedas is the Karma Kanda portion of the Vedas, which in Bhagavad Gita we hear as the flowery portion of the Vedas, where many different sacrifices are provided for getting many benefits, fruitive activities, in other words. Difference between in the purport, as you go in the purport, Prabhupada, I feel like the Prabhupada, as the purport flows, Prabhupada wants to establish one more time strongly that the Srimad Bhagavatam is, one should not consider Vedas are superior and Srimad Bhagavatam is inferior. So he wants to establish that Puranas are not any in any way, even though they are Vedas are Shruti and Puranas are Smriti. Even though Puranas are Smriti, they are by no means less importance to us. They are more important, and especially for this yuga, it is the shelter, right? That is how the previous chapter ended. Where do religious principles take shelter? Is Srimad Bhagavatam. So Prabhupada, in this purport, as he goes through, he wants to establish the supremacy of Srimad Bhagavatam and its relevance for this age, and how even great souls like Sutta Goswami and Sukadeva Goswami are absorbed in the study of Srimad Bhagavatam, or absorbed in chanting the Srimad Bhagavatam. So the difference between Vedas and Puranas are compared. So Prabhupada starts with, he compares Vedas and Puranas and kind of makes the, by using an analogy of Brahmanas and Parivrajakas. And concludes like Brahmanas and Parivrajakas are one and different simultaneously. Kind of like the Chintya, Beda, Abeda Tattva. We say that the Jiva soul and the super soul are one and the same, but also different. So qualitatively one, quantitatively we are minute. No difference between Vedic mantras and what is explained in the Puranas and Itihasas. So Srimad Bhagavata Purana is the ripened fruit. And as I mentioned, great souls like Sukadeva Goswami are already liberated souls, but they are still absorbed in the Bhagavata Purana. That's how glorious it is. Spotless, glorious Purana. So Sutta Goswami is following in the same footsteps. Sukadeva Goswami spoke it to Parikshit Maharaj, and in that arena, Sutta Goswami was there, and he heard with rapt attention, and he is giving it to what he received. He is giving it by following in the footsteps of Sukadeva Goswami to the sages of Naimisharanya. So that by doing that, he is a qualified personality to give this message. So if I step through the purport, Saunaka Rishi extols the qualification of Sutta Goswami. So early on, before Saunaka Rishi starts asking questions in the first chapter, before he poses the 6 questions that begins the Srimad Bhagavatam discussion, they give a Vyasasan to Sutta Goswami and praise his glories on why he is the suitable person in that assembly to speak. The sages said, "Respected Sutta Goswami, you are completely free from all vice. You are well versed in the scriptures, famous for religious life, and in the Puranas and the histories as well, for you have gone through them under proper guidance and have also explained them." So the important part is he has received the instruction under proper guidance, and that qualifies him as a person who is expert in the scriptures. Being the eldest learned Vedantist, O Sutta Goswami, you are acquainted with the knowledge of Vyasadeva, who is the incarnation of Godhead. And you also know other sages who are fully versed in all kinds of physical and metaphysical knowledge. So his association with great saintly people like the Vyasadeva, who is the source of, who gave us the Srimad Bhagavatam, who is none other than the literary incarnation. He is the Satyavesha avatar of the Satyavesha avatar of the Lord, and he is given the literary power to give us the Vedas and Itihasas and Puranas. So just by association, first he was under the guidance and now the association. And because you are submissive, your spiritual masters have endowed you with all the favors bestowed upon a gentle disciple. Therefore, you can tell us all that you have scientifically learned from them. So this, not only he learned it from qualified people, not only he had the great association of elevated Vaishnavas, but his mood was also very right, the submissive mood. In chapter 4 of Bhagavad Gita, we hear how one has to learn, how one has to surrender and learn. Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. When you surrender submissively and inquire and serve, then the spiritual master endows you with all the knowledge, and that is how he has received it. He received all the favors bestowed upon a gentle disciple, and those three aspects qualify him to be the appropriate speaker in that assembly. Sutta Goswami, upon receiving all those, the question, he is going to answer. But how is he going to answer? He sets an example already in the second chapter, when he starts answering the questions of the sages. So before answering, he praised the sages for the exalted questions. And then first thing he did was he took blessings from his spiritual master, Sukadeva Goswami, from whom he received Srimad Bhagavatam. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto him, Shuka, the spiritual master of all sages, the son of Vyasadeva, who, out of his great compassion for those gross materialists who struggle to cross over the darkest regions of material existence, spoke this most confidential supplement to the cream of Vedic knowledge, after having personally assimilated it by experience. So he is offering his obeisances to Sukadeva Goswami, who is given this wonderful confidential knowledge, a cream of Vedic knowledge, and after having assimilated it by his experience. And we always chant the verse Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Sheva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tatojayam Udirayet. That verse also is given by Sutta Goswami. Before reciting this Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayana, unto Naranarayana Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. So he is setting an example of taking blessings from the Acharyas and goddess Saraswati, Veda Vyasa here, who has given this Purana to us, and of course the Supreme Lord himself in the form of Naranarayana. So that is, he just doesn't start speaking, he sets an example of how one should speak Srimad Bhagavatam by taking all the blessings of the Acharyas. And what is his qualification? His qualification was, he says in the last verse of chapter 3, O learned Brahmanas, when Sukadeva Goswami recited Srimad Bhagavatam there in the presence of Emperor Parikshit, I heard him with rapt attention. And thus by his mercy, I learned the Bhagavatam from that great and powerful sage. Now I shall try to make you hear the very same thing as I learned it from him and as I have realized it. So the important points when we discuss this chapter, I think Bhupal Prabhu had pointed a few different points on this. The rapt attention part is very important. He just didn't hear, he heard it with rapt attention. And by the mercy of the speaker and his rapt attention, he received that Srimad Bhagavatam. And then when you receive it in such a way that he realized it, and then he is giving what he has heard and what he has realized. So one has to learn, in the purport Prabhupada says, one has to learn Bhagavatam from the representative of Sukadeva Goswami. So this is establishing the line of disciplic succession. You don't hear from anyone and everyone, one who is not in the disciplic succession. So you try to hear from the representative in the line of Shukdev Goswami. If one wants to see Lord Krishna in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam, we said after Lord Krishna's departure, Srimad Bhagavatam is the literary form of the Lord given to us to take shelter. So when we read Srimad Bhagavatam, if we want to see Krishna in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam, it has to be from the authorized source. And that is what Prabhupada has established. By establishing ISKCON, he has given us that lineage. We just follow our spiritual master and our Shiksha Gurus and our Acharyas. That is the process, and there is no alternative to that. Sukadev Goswami presented Bhagavatam as he heard from his great father, and Sutta Goswami received it in that assembly when it was spoken to Parikshit Maharaj, and as he received it, he is going to give it to the sages of Naimisharanya. But of course, he is going to also have the realized portion of it. The simple hearing is not all. One must realize the text with proper attention. Prabhupada highlights that in the purport. So that's the qualification. He not only heard it, he heard it with rapt attention. And by hearing it with rapt attention and with the mercy of the Sukadev Goswami, from whom he received it, he realized it, and now he is going to give it to the sages of Naimisharanya. So Prabhupada in the purport mentions the comparison between Brahmanas and Parivrajakacharyas. So Parivrajakacharya, we also say in the mantra, pranam mantra for Prabhupada, Jayom Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Ashtottara Sata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So what is a Parivrajakacharya? Who is a Parivrajakacharya rather? So there are 4 stages of sannyasa. Those are all gradually progressive stages in the renounced order of life. I took this from the purport of 5th canto, chapter 1, text 27. So Prabhupada says there are 4 gradual progressive stages in the order of sannyasa. First one is Kutichaka. When one takes sannyasa, he accepts renounced order, but he stays outside of his village in a cottage, and his necessities such as food and clothing are supplied from his home. So he is still in the very early stage of the renounced order. As he progresses further, he reaches the stage of Bahudaka, where he does not accept anything from home. Instead, he goes door to door and collects his food, necessary food from many places. That is called Madhukari. Madhukari, the word Prabhupada translates it as Madhu means honey. Madhukari, Prabhupada states, is the profession of bumblebees. And he says that bumblebees go from one flower to another and take little honey at a time. And they don't dwell on the same flower and take a lot of honey. They go from one flower to another, take little honey at a time, and that's how they collect their honey. Like that, a person who is in this Bahudaka stage, he goes from door to door, but takes only very little, just like the bumblebee, and sustains his life. He is not wanting to collect a lot for himself and store, and so it is just very little for his sustenance. And we read in I think the verse number 8, how the person in the renounced order of life, he comes and gives association to a householder for the benefit of the householder. He only is there for the time required for milking of the cow, it says in that verse. And that is, he gives that association so that he can get some milk or some small amount of food for his sustenance, and giving an opportunity for the householder to do the service and giving his association to the householder. That is how the Bahudaka stage is. The Parivrajaka is the next higher stage. Prabhupada is referred also as Parivrajaka and Paramahamsa in our pranam mantra to him. Parivrajaka is one who travels all over the world to preach the glories of Lord Vasudeva. He not only receives something from people, in the Bahudaka stage, he receives something from people, but in the Parivrajaka stage, Prabhupada says he not only just wants to take something, but he wants to give something in return. So what he has is the Vedic knowledge or the knowledge of the scriptures. So he wants to give that back. He wants to give instruction to the person or the assembly or to humanity. So that is his role. So he travels from place to place and preaches the glories of Lord Vasudeva. The final and the topmost stage is the Paramahamsa stage. When he finishes as a Parivrajaka, he finishes his preaching work. Typically, I would say is a long time, and then sits down in one place strictly for the sake of advancing in spiritual life. I'm remembering the life of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, where he did all his work, all his preaching work, and then at the very end, he wanted to just immerse into the chanting of the holy name. So he secluded himself from the activities of outside world, and he just sat down in one place and kept chanting. So an actual Paramahamsa is one who completely controls his senses and engages in the unalloyed service of the Lord. So so those are the 4 stages, and majority of our preachers that we see in ISKCON, I would think they will all come under the Parivrajaka, all the Prabhupada disciples. They travel all over the world and preach the glories. Of course, they can also be Paramahamsa also. The qualities are there in many of them. So the transition between that may not be very sharp. It's a fuzzy line. And also Prabhupada takes the difference between Brahmanas and Parivrajakas and then uses that analogy to say how Puranas are also important, not just the Vedas. So I thought I'll put it like a table on what Prabhupada says, the role of Brahmanas and role of Parivrajakas. Role of Brahmanas, they are meant to, so Brahmanas, the name can imply many different things. Even sometimes Vaishnavas can be called as Brahmanas. So, but in this particular context, it depends on the context in which it is used. In this particular context, Prabhupada is using Brahmanas as people who are administering fruitive sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas. So they are expert in the Vedic mantras, expert in the chanting of the Vedic mantras and the meter and the accent, and they train themselves and practice systematically so that they can administer that kind of Vedic rituals for people who are wanting to do that. Typically, they are located in a particular place to do this, and their ultimate, we'll come to the ultimate goal later. And the Parivrajakacharyas, on the other hand, they are meant to disseminate transcendental knowledge to one and all. They are not so expert in pronouncing Vedic mantras. They focus more about the messages from the Puranas, because the messages are the same as what the Vedic mantras are saying. By giving the messages instead of just the Vedic mantras, they are able to reach the broader audience and give the message. Just saying the Vedic mantra, some people may like it, a lot of people may not absorb what is the Vedic mantra saying, or what is the purpose of it, or what is the true meaning of that mantra. Like, in chapter 15 of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto matta smritir jnanam apohanam cha vedaisya sarvair aham eva vedya vedant krit vedavid eva chaham. So Vedaischa sarvair aham eva vedya. The whole purpose of the Vedas is to know me. So when Brahmanas are just reciting the Vedic mantras, that message is not being received by the common man. They are just receiving it as a Vedic mantra, at least majority of them. But on the other hand, when a Parivrajaka Acharya is preaching, he is taking the message, the juice out of that mantra. That message is being spoken, and so it's very easy to receive for the common man. And they are itinerant preachers. Itinerant mean they travel from place to place. They are not located in just one particular place. Prabhupada in the end says they are one and different simultaneously because they are meant for the same end in different ways. So the Brahmanas, they are doing these Vedic rituals and sacrifices as prescribed in the Vedas. They also, the ultimate goal there also is to take the soul to the final goal of devotional service. But it is a slower process. Some people are more inclined, some people are less inclined. So to the people who are less inclined to take up bhakti, the process is, there are other steps through which you go, and one of them is the karma kanda path, and that is what the Brahmanas are administering there. But the more faster and more easier or more quicker path, one can achieve the end goal within one lifetime. That's what Prabhupada reiterates. The ultimate goal in the role of a Parivrajaka Acharya is to help with self-realization through the process of bhakti. So the end goal is same, just a different way of achieving it. So the role of Brahmanas and Parivrajakas are given to show that just because Brahmanas are giving Vedas, that doesn't make them more important. But for the common man, it actually is the Parivrajakas or Vaishnavas who are more important because they are giving the path that is faster and easier for a person to follow. And in this day and age, there are not even qualified Brahmanas to say the Vedic mantras properly in Kali Yuga. So that path existed in the prior yugas, but we may not even have that, unless we have a very qualified Brahmana to do that. So taking from that, Prabhupada says that just like Parivrajaka Acharyas are important, and not just the Brahmanas, same way Vedas are important because they are Shruti, but Puranas are even more important. They contain the same message that are in the Vedic mantras. And Prabhupada quotes Jiva Goswami in the purport saying that Vedas, Puranas, Itihasas, they are all emanations from the breathing of the Supreme. So they are, even though one is Shruti, one is Smriti, they should not be considered differently. They are equally important and they are coming from emanating from the Supreme. And Vyasadeva is none other than the Satyavesha avatar of the Lord. His incarnation, the purpose of that incarnation was to give us that. Vyasadeva first compiled the Vedas and then he was dissatisfied. And those are the things we will be studying as we go through the 4th chapter. And when he was dissatisfied, under the order of his guru, Narada Muni, he gave an exclusive rendition glorifying the Supreme Lord, and that is the Bhagavata Purana. So Vyasadeva, who compiled the Vedas, he gave us the essence of the Vedic knowledge, the cream of Vedic knowledge in the Bhagavata Purana. So then that means so much more important, so much more relevant for this age, for the common man. This Bhagavata Purana, in the 43rd verse, when Sutta Goswami reveals what is the shelter of religious principle, this Bhagavata Purana is as brilliant as the sun, and it has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Purana. So that is our only path of light in this dark age of ignorance. And in the first canto, first chapter, third verse, the beautiful verse where the Srimad Bhagavatam is described as the mature fruit of the Vedic literature. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of desire tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. They just like the parrot, by poking the fruit, makes it even more juicier and more tastier. By emanating the Srimad Bhagavatam emanating from the lips of Shukadeva Goswami, even though it is already Srimad Bhagavatam is relishable and nectarian, just emanating from the lips of Sri Shukadeva Goswami, who is considered as the parrot, he made the fruit even more tasteful for everyone. So that is the glory of the Purana. So Sutta Goswami, the qualification one to speak this Srimad Bhagavatam, he didn't just get it by birth. The qualification of a person to be a Vaishnava or a preacher or anything does not come by birth. We have heard it many times, many different places. In Bhagavad Gita chapter 4, Krishna says that Chaturvarnyam Maya Srishtam Guna Karma Vibhagasha. Now I created these 4 divisions in the society based on guna and karma, the modes in which a person is associated, the goodness, passion, and ignorance, and the work associated with that mode. Based on that, I created Maya Srishtam. No, I created, God says, I created these 4 divisions, so that the mistaken understanding in the Kali Yuga is you belong to a certain caste, Brahmana or whatever, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra, based on your birth. That mistaken understanding is been addressed in so many places in our scriptures, and there are so many examples in our scriptures of that not being the case. And Sutta Goswami is one such example. In the 18th chapter, he says, when the sages of Naimisharanya are further asking him to speak more about the Srimad Bhagavatam and the details of what Parikshit Maharaj asked and what Sukadeva Goswami responded. At that time, he says, Sri Sutta Goswami says, "O God, although we are born in a mixed caste, we are still promoted in birthright simply by serving and following the great who are advanced in knowledge. Even by conversing with such great souls, one can without delay cleanse oneself of all disqualifications resulting from lower births." So Sutta Goswami is, in the purport says, Prabhupada says that he was born in a mixed caste. And in those days, when one is not born of a pure, same Brahmana mother and Brahmana father, then you are considered lower. Mixed caste are considered lower in birth. So he's saying, I was lower in birth. I was born in a mixed caste, but I am promoted by serving and following the great who are advanced in knowledge. And the great souls, they have the qualification to pull you out of that lower birth. So qualification is not by birth. We have many examples in our scriptures, like Haridas Thakur. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu clearly showed that even though Haridas Thakur was from a Mohammedan family, by his birth, he was appointed as the Namacharya, Acharya of the holy name. What greater benediction can be given, what greater title can be given for Haridas Thakur but his birth was not taken into account. His qualification was taken into account. His qualities and his nature was taken into account. And we know of Narada Muni himself, right? Vasudev's guru. Narada Muni, in his previous birth, he was a son of a maid servant, and all he did was associate with the Vaishnavas and serve them when they came to stay during the 4 rainy months. So by that association, he cleansed himself and he elevated himself, and he saw the Lord, and then continued his path, and in the next birth he got the transcendental body of Narada Muni. So like that, one does not get qualification by birth. The qualities of Vaishnava are mentioned in many different places in our scriptures. One of the ones that came to my mind was the text 42 from chapter 18. Samodamas tapas saucham shantir arjavam evacha jnanam vijnanam astikyam brahma karma swabhavajam. Peacefulness, self-control, austerity, purity, tolerance, honesty, knowledge, wisdom, and religiousness. These are the natural qualities by which Brahmanas work. So, in addition, we can think of, there are many different places where these are given. These qualities are given. Some have a little bit more, some have a little less. A few other qualities I can think are the compassionate nature of the Brahmanas or the Vaishnavas, right? Compassionate nature. They want to share what they have. We have very great examples like Ramanujacharya, Srila Prabhupada. How they took their spiritual master's desire and went through and shared with, even though they're physically they were so much having so much trouble. So that compassion for the other living entities, and seeing seeing all of them as equal. Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavi Hastini. So Suni Chaiva Swapakecha Pandita Samadarshinaha. They see everyone equal. They see the spark in everyone, not just the external body. So those are some of the qualities of a Brahmana. That those qualities make them qualify one as a Brahmana and not just the birth. In fact, by birth, one can be a Brahmana and can do so many abominable things that he is not even qualified to be a Shudra. So that is the kind of birth qualification is. To be qualified by birth, it's a different, in the prior ages where everything used to be more pure and samskaras were done, qualification by birth was suitable. But in Kali Yuga, it is not. So Sutta Goswami, even though born in a lower caste, by his association, by his qualities, by his the humility he has and the surrender, he has received all the mercy from the sages and the spiritual master. He is exemplified and he is qualified to speak the Srimad Bhagavatam. So I want to conclude by saying, by sharing some of the messages as I received from this, as I was putting this together. The sages of Naimisharanya and Sutta Goswami are giving us a gift. So just like Arjuna, he was put into a bewildered situation by Krishna, and he asked questions, and he brought out Bhagavad Gita from the mouth, or Krishna delivered Bhagavad Gita to us through Arjuna, by bewildering Arjuna. Same way, Krishna delivered Srimad Bhagavatam to us through Parikshit Maharaj, by putting him in a bewilderment state for a short time. He delivered by using him as an instrument and Shukadeva Goswami as the speaker, he delivered the Srimad Bhagavatam. Similarly, that same message was taken and restated by Sutta Goswami to the sages of Naimisharanya. They are all very qualified sages. They are asking for the welfare of the people of Kali Yuga, people like me, the persons who have lost their vision, so that one should take shelter of this spotless Purana that is given as a gift by these sages of Naimisharanya by asking such suitable questions to Sutta Goswami. Association with elevated souls and following their instructions. Prabhupada in the purport of 18th chapter 18th verse says that Ganges water is accepted as pure. Power of the pure devotees is such that they are like Ganges. Just by their association, one can be cleansed. Just by them seeing a low born, one can be cleansed. What to speak of the association, he says. And share the message of Srimad Bhagavatam that you receive and realize it. Realize it and then share it. Receive it with rapt attention, realize it and share it. So Prabhupada also says in the same purport, the mental diseases of the present generation are more acute than bodily diseases. It is quite fit and proper to take up the preaching of Srimad Bhagavatam all over the world without delay. So I will, that's how I want to conclude today. Thank you all for your patient listening and giving your precious morning to me. I hope I gave something of relevance and importance for all of us. Thank you for the opportunity. And if I had made any offenses, if I had said something wrong, it is my improper knowledge. So please forgive me and please correct me. Hare Krishna. Please take a few minutes. It's 8 o'clock. Please take a few minutes and share your thoughts, or if you have any discussions.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your wonderful lecture, and thank you for reiteration of the glorification of Srimad Bhagavatam. I mean, every Saturday morning we hear from Srimad Bhagavatam, and when we know the importance and glories of that grantha, then our faith increases. So thank you so much for reiterating that this morning. Prabhuji, I have just one clarification. So in the 4 stages of sannyasa, you mentioned like Kutichaka, Bahudaka, Paribrajaka, Acharya, and Paramhansha. What is the exact difference between Kutichaka and Banaprastha ashram? Is it like pre-sannyasa or like, just wanted to clarify, or is there any similarity between Banaprastha and Kutichaka stage?
I do not know, Mataji. I do not know the answer for that. I always thought Vanaprastha is pre-sannyasa, but I did not read anything in that regard of how it could be similar. I mean, there is some similarity, definitely, like you're thinking, Vanaprastha. But Vanaprastha does not always have to be a sannyasa, right, Mataji? Vanaprastha can be just you can be a grihastha and become a vanaprastha also. I have heard something like that. I could be wrong.
Yes. No, yeah, you were right. Yeah, Vanaprastha, in Vanaprastha, maybe wife can also follow
Yeah,
the
wife can
husband.
also follow you. And
Follow,
even in,
yeah.
I think in the, I'm forgetting which second canto or third canto where we read also something like that. Wife also follows along with the husband to the Vanaprastha ashrama.
Yeah. No, so in the Kutichaka section, you
I'm
mentioned
thinking
that.
Kutichaka is sannyasa ashrama, so that may be the difference. But
yeah, because food is supplied from home, so that's why I was thinking like whether it's like kind of similar to Vanaprastha or not. But I believe that it's renounced order at that point of time. One cannot stay with wife, but definitely food can be supplied from homes. Thank you so much for the clarification and for your lecture this morning. Thanks.
Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Any other thoughts? Otherwise, we can.
Hare Krishna, Venumadari Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Very nice and wonderful lecture today. You are very pretty much clear what you want to convey. Same thing like Privachika Acharya and Brahmana. That is what I learned today a little bit as something new for me. The difference and how Prabhupada is talking about both are equal, but at the same time, Parivachikaryas are actually more into preaching work, and Brahmanas are actually more into reciting Vedas, mantras and other stuff. It's not that Prabhupada very clearly told that it is not something is lesser and something greater, but more Parivachikaryas are actually helping, especially in the condition of Kali Yuga. They're going and preaching the glories of the Lord in the Srimad Bhagavatam. That is more ripened fruit, which is very, very, very important. So that is very nice, Prabhu. Thank you. Another thing also, like you said, we have 4 kinds of sannyasas. I heard a little bit there, but Madhukari, we use the word, but really I never know the meaning of Madhukari word. So today I came to know, okay, Madhu means like bee, going one place to other place. So that is the real meaning of Madhukari. So.
Yeah, Prabhupada's mercy.
Yeah.
From his purport directly. Yeah. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. It was excellent and you enhanced my knowledge. Thank you. God bless you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Okay.
Hare Krishna, Venu Prabhu, so you compiled very well, and I don't know how much time you took to collect all this material. Really understand that. So, as Venkat Prabhu said, that Pariyajikas are really, I came to know those kind of things today. But yes, in India, most of the sannyasis, they say, so we should not cross not only sannyas, grihastha also, we should not cross the ocean. Some people are reserved. I don't know which category they belong to. So I'm also, I don't know which category they're grihastha also, but they say they are not supposed to cross. And if you cross that, they have to do some kind of a lot of austerity also. So after coming back, so if at all they cross, I don't know which category they belong to, sannyasis. Maybe if we find time, maybe we gather some information later.
Yeah, I found something, Prabhu, but I didn't read in great detail on that. There was a document I found where the different beliefs that exist, in Kali Yuga, like how birthright, gives you puts you in a particular varna, and the question you asked, how traveling across the ocean makes you disqualifies you as a Brahmana. All those things were addressed in that document. I can send that link to you. So it was a very extensive one, so I didn't read the whole way. But they had cited different scriptural evidence and our acharyas sightings, and they had discussed it very, very beautifully and in great detail. So that probably can answer that. I did not delve into that too much.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Okay, it's 8:08. Thank you all again for the opportunity, for purifying myself through this small effort. And thank you all for giving your time this morning. Have a nice, wonderful weekend. See you all again later in the evening for the reading. Hare Krishna. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Assembled Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.